In my office in Ravenna, I have a plaque that is displayed pretty prominently, and a lot of people, when they come to my office, comment on it. It was a gift from a parishioner. It says, "God does not give us what we can handle. God helps us handle what we are given." God doesn't give us stuff that we can handle. God helps us handle whatever we're given. That plaque may represent the way you look at life. It may. For many people, it does. God didn't do this, but God is going to help me with it. But it is one of the two ways that most Christians look at life. It only represents one of the two ways. So if what I just said left you feeling perhaps a little bit cold, perhaps it means that you follow the other way. The other way is just as valid. It's just different. The other way says this: everything happens for a reason. Have you ever heard that? Everything happens for a reason. So whatever happens, we need to see it as meant to be. Which means that the faith view, when you look at things that way, is God has a perfect plan. And parts of it might feel wrong or cruel as we go through life. But that means we just have to not question it and know that when we get to heaven, it will all make sense. Now it doesn't, but then it will. We will see when we get to heaven that everything in life was actually, no matter how painful, it was perfect, right on schedule. That's one view. And some of you may be saying, yeah, you know what? Deep down, I really do believe that. The other view doesn't say that, though. We've got people that say everything happens for a reason, and then we've got others that say nothing happens for a reason. The things that happen, they just happen. It's not for a reason. God didn't do it. Those people actually might say, don't blame God for the bad stuff. Things just happen. God didn't decide to have a tornado strike one town and spare the other one. It just happened. And why? Because of low pressure zones that are part of the science of meteorology. God doesn't do that stuff, but God is with us in it. You can hear that view in the plaque I talked about. God doesn't give us what we can handle. God helps us handle whatever we're given. So what did you find yourself thinking about as I just laid those two things out for you? Were you thinking about the death of a loved one? Were you thinking about some loss, like a job in your life, maybe an experience that you labeled a failure that kind of haunts you? Are you thinking about the end of a relationship, maybe a work relationship or a personal relationship? Are you thinking about the end of a marriage? Whatever it is that you're thinking of, you're left with the question, was that part of a perfect plan? Or did it just happen? Incredibly, the church supports both of these views. We are free to believe either one. And the church isn't alone in that. The scriptures are the same way. You can go through the Bible and you can find scriptures that make it sound as if everything happens for a reason and all you have to do is go along for the ride. And you'll find other scriptures that say nothing happens for a reason, but God is with us in all of it. Whichever way we decide to look at life, they share the most important thing in common. Both of them say, God is with us in all of it. How interesting what Jesus says in the gospel today. He says, come to me, all of you who labor and are burdened, and I'll give you rest. And you know, I now, when I read that, take out a couple of the words that were distracting me for a long time. I no longer, when I read it, pay too much attention to all you who labor and are burdened, because I used to think it meant people other than me. I used to think, well, I mean, I work pretty hard at my 2 parishes, but they're not that big, and I'm sure Bishop Ed works a lot harder than I do, and I bet Pope Francis does too. And I'll bet you that I'm not as burdened with the personal problems I have as some other people. But Jesus isn't saying, this is just for you and you. Who among us does not have burdens? Who among us is not laboring through life? So we need to hear this not as a word for someone else, but for us. Come to me, all of you, and I will give you rest. And then he says something fascinating. The image he uses is a yoke. Take my yoke upon you. A lot of us have trouble with that image because we don't know what to picture. We're not quite sure what a yoke is. And so we picture Jesus giving us something, like imposing it from on high. Here, take my yoke. But that's not what a yoke is. In farm life, a yoke is an apparatus with 2 holes that either the horses or the oxen stick their heads in so that it balances the plow they drag behind them. It's got 2 openings. You don't put 1 in a yoke, you always put 2. So when Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, we've got to get rid of the image that he's saying, like, here you go. We need to understand that there's 2 openings. So when he says my yoke, he's talking to us from the other hole, from the other opening. His head is in it. And he's saying, look, I've got a spot right here. Let's do this together. Let's plow through life together. Take my yoke, because I'll make it easier for you. I'll make the burden lighter. I'll do it all with you. That's what he means when he says, take my yoke. We are being encouraged to hear the headline in today's gospel and not to get distracted by one of the minor details. The headline here is not, why do things happen? Because we're not going to know that until heaven. Don't you deep down realize that? We're not going to know. All the time that we spend trying to figure out why things happen is kind of wasted time because humans don't get to know things like that. The headline here is, no matter what happens and no matter why, if there's a reason or if there isn't, God is with us in all of it. We're yoked to the Lord. So we are bound. There is a companionship that we cannot get away from, nor would we want to. We are united. As I look around this assembly, I see people with incredible burdens. Now that Emma's home, the Messick family is here at church. They've got a long road ahead. The Martin family has had the 2nd loss in 6 months of these brothers that are so important in our community. There are people facing incredible burdens right now. Some of the things I'm not going to say because it's too much to say out loud, isn't it? So we're being encouraged to think, Lord, where are you with me in this? Because I know you're there. Because no matter which way I think of life, you're with me in all of it. If we realized who was in the other opening of the yoke, the one right next to us, we would never be able to experience fear or doubt again. Because we would realize that anytime we feel weak, we can lean into that yoke because there's a momentum to it. It's being pulled along with divine power. So do the burdens that we face happen for a reason? We don't know. One thing we do know, God is with us